If you're looking at Cocoa Beach as an investment, a short-term rental, a vacation property, maybe something that pays for itself, there are three things that will determine whether this works or it doesn't. And most buyers don't find out about all three until after closing. If you're serious about moving to Florida's Space Coast, this channel is for you. I'm Carrie Liotta. I'm a waterfront and relocation specialist here on the Space Coast. I work specifically in Cocoa Beach, Merritt Island, Satellite Beach, and the surrounding areas. I live here, I work here, and I'm going to give you the straight information so you can make a decision that actually holds up. Let's get into it. Before we go further, let me tell you about who this is built for. This video is for you if you're relocating to the Space Coast and wondering whether buying an investment property here makes financial sense. It's for you if you're an out-of-state buyer who's heard about short-term rental income in beach markets and want to understand if Cocoa Beach specifically fits that model. And it's for you if you're a serious buyer, not somebody just browsing Zillow on a Sunday, but someone who actually runs numbers and is trying to understand what you're getting into before you commit. If your budget is somewhere between $350,000 and $800,000 and you want a real breakdown, not a sales pitch, you're in the right spot. And later in this video, I'm going to walk through a specific example of a buyer mistake I see regularly, one that costs people real money, so stay with me on that. Here's why this topic matters right now and why the timing of this video is deliberate. The Cocoa Beach and broader Space Coast market has shifted. Condo inventory is up significantly. Sellers are negotiating, days on market have extended. That sounds like bad news, but for an investor or a serious buyer, a shifting market is where the real opportunities are, if you know what you're looking for. And at the same time, the rules around short-term rentals, flood insurance costs, and HOA restrictions have all changed or tightened in the recent years. So you have a market that looks more accessible on the surface, prices softening, more inventory, but underneath that, there are layers that require more due diligence than this market needed 3 or 4 years ago. That's the tension right now, and that's exactly why I want to help you navigate. Later, I'll explain how flood zone designation is something most buyers treat as a checkbox, can actually be the single biggest factor in whether a property pencils out as an investment or not. So let's break this into 3 parts. The first thing you need to understand is that Cocoa Beach is not one market. It's several micro markets layered on top of each other, and they behave differently. You have oceanfront condos, you have canal front single family homes, you have properties that sit in short-term rental friendly zones, and you have properties that look like investments on paper but are locked into HOA rules that prohibit rentals under 30 days or 90 days or entirely. This is where buyers get surprised. Someone sees a beachside condo, does the math on what it would rent out on Airbnb, makes an offer without confirming whether the HOA allows short-term rentals at all. Some buildings here have a wait list just to get on the rental program. Others have capped the number of units allowed to rent at any given time. So step 1, before you fall in love with a property, is understanding what rules of that specific building or community actually are. The contrast here is significant. 2 condos in the same building can have completely different investment potential based purely on timing of purchase, rental cap availability, and HOA governance. If you get this wrong, you're not just leaving money on the table, you may be sitting on a property you cannot legally use the way you intended. So let's talk about the financial reality. Cocoa Beach is a drive-to beach market. That matters. It draws consistent short-term rental traffic. Families from Orlando, couples from Atlanta, visitors for rocket launches, space events, and the Brevard County tourism calendar. Demand is real, but demand doesn't automatically mean cash flow. Here's what that actual number looks like right now for a mid-range investment property. And I'm speaking in general terms because every property is different. A well-positioned oceanfront condo in the 450 to 550 range in a building that allows short-term rentals can generate somewhere between 40 and 65 in gross annual rental income depending on season, unit size, and how well it's managed. That sounds good, but here's the part nobody's talking about. Your carrying costs in a coastal Florida market are not the same as inland markets. You have HOA fees, sometimes $800, $1,000, or $1,200 a month or more in older oceanfront buildings. You have flood insurance. You have windstorm insurance. You have property management fees if you're out of state, typically 20 to 30% of gross revenue for short-term rental management. You have vacancy. You have maintenance on property that is exposed to salt air. When you stack all of that against your gross income, the net number can look very different from what you're projected. But here's what changes everything. The buyers do well here are the ones who run a fully loaded cost analysis before they make an offer, not after. They follow their insurance costs before they're under contract. They've called the HOA. They've talked to a property manager to get realistic income projections, not optimistic ones. And let me ask you something. Are you doing your analysis? Because most buyers aren't, and that's the difference. If you're finding this useful, make sure you subscribe. I put out straightforward content like this specifically for people making real decisions about the Space Coast. No fluff, just information you actually need. And as I said earlier, I'd come back to flood zone designation. Here it is. Cocoa Beach sits on a barrier island. Much of it is in FEMA flood zone, AE or VE, high-risk zones that require mandatory flood insurance if you have a federally backed mortgage. But even if you're paying cash, you still need to understand what flood insurance costs because it affects your carrying costs. It affects your ROI and it affects your resale value. Here's the reality. Flood insurance on a coastal property here can run anywhere from $2,000 to $8,000 a year or more depending on the property's elevation, the flood zone, the building age, and whether the structure has been elevated or retrofitted. That is not a small number. And with FEMA Risk Rating 2.0 changes that rolled out in recent years, premiums are no longer tied to your neighbor's rate. They're individualized, which means 2 units in the same building can have very different flood insurance costs. Here's the part nobody talks about, and this is the buyer mistake I see regularly. I had an out-of-state buyer, serious investor, had done this in other markets who fell in love with a canal front property here. Great location, solid rental history. The numbers look good at first glance. They got under contract. During due diligence, we pulled the actual flood insurance quote, not an estimate, the real quote. It came in at almost $4,000 higher annually than what they had budgeted. That $4,000 difference, when you analyze it and apply it to a cap rate calculation, changed their entire analysis. They still closed, but only because they caught it during the inspection period and renegotiated the price. If they had waived due diligence or rushed the timeline, that number would have surfaced after closing. The lesson here is flood insurance is not a line item you estimate. It's a number you confirm before you're locked in. So here's what we covered. First, Cocoa Beach is a multi-layered market. Not every property that looks like an investment is structured to function as one. HOA rental restrictions are real and they vary significantly by building and community. Second, the gross rental income numbers here can be attractive, but your net cash flow depends on fully loaded carrying costs like HOA fees, insurance management, and maintenance. Run the real numbers before you fall in love with the property. Third, flood zone designation and flood insurance are not a checkbox item. They are financial variables that can change your entire investment analysis, and they need to be confirmed with an actual quote in your due diligence process. The Space Coast is a legitimate investment market. There are real opportunities here right now, particularly with the current inventory levels and seller negotiation posture. But the buyers who do well here are the ones who come in prepared. If you're seriously considering buying in Cocoa Beach, Merritt Island, or anywhere on the Space Coast, and you want clarity based on your actual budget, your timeline, and your investment goals, reach out to me directly. I work with buyers who are making real decisions. I'll give you an honest picture of what this market looks like right now, what's realistic for your situation, and what to watch out for. My contact information is in the description. You can also find me through this channel. Come with your questions. I'll give you straight answers. I'm Carrie Liotta. This is the Space Coast, and I'll see you in the next video.